Battering and abuse, as defined by research, is patterns of cohesive control that one person exercises over another, especially when that abuse is inflicted by an intimate partner, causing an array of psychological distress, mainly one, depression. But what's interesting and what's very remarkable is that these abandoned women, these abused women, manage to survive, and they manage to emerge from their abusive relationship. I have grouped these strong women, as I've labeled them, in a heading titled Survival of the Fittest. In doing this, I do not by any means show disrespect to the many victims that have gone through the abusive struggled and came out or did not survive. To them and to their families, I express my sincere condolences. To them, I say in their memories, we continue to stand up against domestic violence. We continue to bring more awareness and education to the forefront, most especially into the homes of our Pacific Islanders. I do not condone the behaviors of any individuals who are responsible for inflicting this type of injuries or ending the life of a human being. These strong women, these women that I've categorized as survival of the fittest, are out there in the world today. They're out there writing a new chapter in their lives. They're out there helping others navigate their journey through an abusive relationship. They're out there uplifting, and they're out there being the light in the world. As a Pacific Island woman and a survivor of domestic violence, I have realized that surviving this journey has afforded me a tremendous time of learning. Not only learning about myself, my psychological being, and my emotional capacity, but also that of my spouse. I learned deep about my culture and my child upbringing and how all this factoring in the context of domestic violence. I have learned to use coping strategies that were unknown to me, yet submerged under my unconscious, only to surface when I needed them later in my years to survive and to keep living. My culture, I believe, has helped me to make the choice and to choose and to perceive the effectiveness in my coping mechanism which I choose in my specific situation. Allow me now to tell you my story. I invite you to go back with me into my childhood when abuse, physical and emotion, was introduced into my life. I believe that all these experiences initially create my thought process and my coping mechanisms that I later use in my life to survive. At the early age of 5 and 6, I can remember vividly domestic violence amongst my family members and my relatives. The physical and the emotional effect were telltale signs of how brutal and how traumatized the beatings or the abusive were. This evidence were seen on their body parts, their faces, and not to mention their disposition of the women in my circle. The women of Fiji suffered quietly. They went about carrying out their responsibilities as mothers, as wives, as daughters, and as members of their community. The men, on the other hand, won the title of patriarch or headship in their family. And I believe it's because of this title that they did not see the wrong in their abusive behaviors. They continued the cycle. They were never questioned, or they never told their stories. They continued to live life as if nothing happened. Domestic violence in Fiji has never been so prevalent as it is today. Domestic violence has always been an accepted norm amongst the island people of Fiji. Another factor in my experiences as a child is corporate punishment. As I attended grade school, corporate punishment was in action. I remember coming to school late or wearing an ironed uniform or having dirty fingernails. That warned us a trip to the punishment teacher's office, and often we would be inflicted with physical punishment, which was done by a belt or by a rod. And usually it was a man teacher that served the punishment. Now, I often hear the saying, spare the rod and spoil a child. I can see the wisdom in that, but in the world that I lived in, my father did not believe in sparing the rod. Although I've come to appreciate his thought process, the message that came after the hitting was very confusing to me. Most often, I've heard this from the mouths of many parents, aunties and uncles, grandparents. We hit you because we love you. If we didn't love you, we wouldn't hit you and we wouldn't correct you. So, for the longest time growing up as a kid, I always equated love with being hit. All these experiences with fear and anxieties, I locked up in my memory bank until the opportunity time came when it caused it to surface, and I can rely on them as coping mechanism. As I fast forward towards my dating scene, I dated a Fijian man who was very cultured, and I believe it was perfect. I remember many times when we got into disagreements or things weren't done according to his standard, he never laid a finger on me. He never hit me. And then my childhood thoughts would come to play. If we didn't hit you, we didn't love you. And so for the longest time I thought, he never hit me, so he must not love me. Well, being a married wife, that was a different story. Stepping into the marriage scene, things became real as the abuse started. And as the abuse started, my early childhood memories of domestic violence came into play. You are a Fijian woman, and this is an accepted norm amongst your people. You continue to care for your children. You continue to be a wife to your husband. And so I did exactly what I saw other women of Fiji did. I knew no difference. As the abuse continued, I became very skilled at my coping mechanisms. One of the many coping mechanisms that was very familiar amongst my Fijian sisters was the avoidance coping. Avoidance coping was we ignored and denied that abuse was happening and carried on with our responsibilities as a woman in the home. And at the same time, harboring up all the disappointment and hurt feeling to ourselves. We never shared our stories. Another coping mechanism was behavioral coping. And in this instance, I used this to look for positive in the bad situation that I was in. But I didn't know any difference. I used it to survive my toxic relationship. Now, today, I'm a mother of 6 awesome adult children, a grandmother of 12. I often wonder if my children were affected by my abusive struggle. I often wondered if they would repeat the cycle of domestic violence. I have seen the effects of my abusive struggle in the lives of my children, and to them I thank them for their patience, because I know that with me they suffered, and to them I say that I love them tremendously. My support system as I was going through my journey was amazing. Though I didn't share my stories with any of them, my parents, my siblings, my relatives, they knew when to jump in and to extend a hand in raising my children and in helping me out. To them, I will always be in debt. This has truly been a journey, a remarkable journey. But please know that when I say this, I don't make light of the situation. For abuse and for battering is not something to take lightly. So if you're a victim navigating your journey out there, this is what I want to say. There is tremendous help out there, more help than I knew when I was journeying my journey. Remember that you are not alone. There are people like me who have survived, and there are many more that are still in the same predicament that you are in. You can reach out and ask for help. And also, if I leave anything with you today, if you forget anything else, I want you to remember one thing. As I journeyed my journey, I always remember the words of my dear mother, who always came to my rescue, it seemed, after a session of battered or abuse. I remember her words when she always said, "Draw near unto God, and he will draw near unto you. Pray always." To those of you that are struggling, to those of you that are navigating your journey, remember also that the choice that you make today, whether you remain in your situation or you leave to get help, remember this, the choice that you make for you and your loved ones has to be that you secure a safe place. Secure a safe place at the foremost. Thank you, and Minaka Wakalewi.